Hi, this is Peter Case. You're listening to the Your Morning Coffee podcast with my friends Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart. Weekly music news for the new music business.
From Billboard, remembering the music industry players who died in 2024.
From Bloomberg, the business of selling out is warping the music industry.
From Billboard, please, please, please stop using my song. Can artists force politicians to lay off their music? Plus another installment of the Your Morning Coffee Legal Minute with Schwartz and Schreiber. We are glad you're here on what is our 4th anniversary episode. So Jay and I are going to get the party going right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand!
Your morning coffee is on the air. On the air. On the air. On the air. On the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
That is such a great song. We were so saddened to hear of the passing of Greg Kinn this past week. Our thoughts and prayers go to his family. Such a loss. I had an opportunity to work with Greg a few times. I shot his last album cover, which was called Rekindled back in 2017. Just a sweet, sweet guy.
Yeah, and great artist. And boy, I sure remember when that song hit, boy, and it's one of those tracks that just kind of jumped out of the radio.
Yeah.
You know, when you just, it's like, it just, for whatever reason, and not only me, but certainly for me, it caught my ear, you know.
Yeah.
And
so catchy.
Yeah.
More hooks in a tackle box. There was an article in Billboard about people passing away, and the headline, as you mentioned a second ago, remembering the music industry players who died in 2024. That was by Mark Schneider.
Right, and to honor those who passed on, we're highlighting these often unsung individuals who left a lasting impression across every aspect of the business. Over the course of 2024, we've lost important figures, including exacting rock engineer Steve Albini, MTV pioneer Gail Sparrow, Columbia Records legend Dick Asher, and Fader co-founder Rob Stone.
Yeah, we encourage you to read this whole list But here are just a few wonderful music business friends we lost this past year. The first one, Charles Cross. Sadly, he passed away at 67, and that was August 9th. The celebrated music writer, he wrote books on Nirvana, Jimi Hendrix. He was editor of the influential Pacific Northwest magazine, The Rocket, which my brother wrote for, and I did some photography for. He was also a founding editor of Backstreets, which is that Bruce Springsteen fanzine.
Yeah, we also lost on August 9th Susan Wojcicki. She was one of the most respected female executives in the male-dominated tech industry. Wojcicki was one of Google's earliest employees and led YouTube for 9 years before stepping down back in 2023.
Yeah, and on July 25th, we lost Dick Asher, the former president of Polygram and Columbia Records. He had worked with some of the biggest names, including Bruce Springsteen, Michael Jackson, Bon Jovi, the list goes on and on. Dick Asher.
Yeah, June 8th, we lost Mark James. He was 83, the Grammy-winning songwriter, penned such hits as Suspicious Minds for Elvis Presley. What a great song. Always on My Mind, Willie Nelson and Pet Shop Boys, of course, did that. And Hooked on a Feeling, which was covered by B.J. Thomas and Blue Suede back in the day.
Oh, my gosh. Those are such great songs. We also lost Eddie Rosenblatt. I got to work with Eddie, not directly. I did get to meet him, when he was running Geffen. What a powerful, great guy. He played a pivotal role in the rise of Geffen Records. He steered the label through its formative years and established Geffen as a powerhouse, in the music industry. And under his leadership as the label president, Geffen became synonymous with the success of, artists like Guns N' Roses, Nirvana, and Don Henley. So that was Geffen Records and DGC Records.
And he was at the Warner Music. He was at Warner Brothers Records before that, if I'm not mistaken, as well. Back on May 8th, of course, we lost Steve Albini, only 61, a Chicago institution. Albini engineered. He hated the producer tag, by the way. Thousands of recordings over the decades, perhaps most notably Nirvana's In Utero and the Pixies' Surfer Rosa. The notoriously quick-paced studio wizard also worked with P.J. Harvey, Cheap Trick, Urge Overkill, The Breeders, The Stooges, Jawbreaker, and countless others.
Yeah, so young. And finally, Bob Heil. He's an accomplished live music sound engineer, best known as the inventor of the Heil Talkbox. And that's synonymous with Peter Frampton, of course, Show Me the Way, Joe Walsh, Rocky Mountain Way, and other guitarists looking to manipulate their guitar tones with their own voice. And recently, I've been listening to an amazing singer-songwriter, Hannah Wickland, who is sort of bringing the Talkbox back on certain tracks, and it's just a wonderful sound.
Yeah, and then Bob also made microphones and lots of speakers and stuff. Really talented guy, and at a time, as all of those systems were being developed to accommodate big concerts, when the Beatles started, of course, it was pretty ridiculous what they were having to play through. So anyway, we're also happy to announce that this Friday we are recording a special 4-year anniversary bonus episode with former Spotify data alchemist Glenn McDonald. He's the author of the book You Have Not Yet Heard Your Favorite Song. He also created one of our favorite websites, everynoise.com, which sadly is in sort of limbo now. But
yeah, if you haven't visited that site, it is so amazing. We've been talking about it for years, and it has basically all of the different genres that you would see on Spotify. And there are, it looks like thousands. There's so many of them. And it's this hierarchy that he's put together. And as you mentioned, the site is sort of in limbo now. And we'll ask Glenn about it when we speak to him this week. But here's a recent update from the website. And this is from Glenn. He said, with my layoff from Spotify, December 4th, 2023, I lost the internal data access required for ongoing updates to many parts of this website. Most of this, as a result, is now a static snapshot of what, for now, will be the final state from the site's 10-year history and evolution hosted on my own server. Some pieces may get disabled and re-enabled over time, and some that only made sense with current data may never return, but we'll see.
Yeah, interesting. Should all this fall too, the site is also preserved in the Internet Archive. Thank you to everyone. He said, thank you to everyone who loved this site along the way for believing in music and exploration and collective knowledge and public good. Further major news will be posted here, but for ongoing updates, follow my blog at Furia, Furia.com, or Every Noise, or at Every Noise on Twitter. Signed, Glenn.
Yeah, well, we'll talk to him a little bit about that. You can check out Glenn's book, as Mike mentioned. It's called You Have Not Yet Heard Your Favorite Song. And this following story that was in your Morning Coffee newsletter, the headline was How to Break Free of Spotify's Algorithm, and that was from MIT Technology Review by Tiffany Ng. Check out that article. They talk a lot about Glenn McDonald and his book and his work at Spotify. And again, look for our 4-year anniversary bonus episode with Glenn McDonald. That's coming soon.
Indeed. There was a story recently in Music Business Worldwide by Daniel Tenser, of course, with the headline as Suno and Udio admit training AI with unlicensed music. Record industry says there's nothing fair about stealing an artist's life's work.
Right. Suno said that it's, quote, training data includes essentially all music files of reasonable quality that are accessible on the open internet, abiding by paywalls, password protections, and the like, combined with similarly available text descriptions, end quote.
Right, but both Suno and Udio argued that their use of copyrighted materials owned by Sony Music Group, Universal Music Group, and Warner Music Group falls under the fair use exemption to U.S. copyright law. So we thought this was a perfect time for another installment of the Your Morning Coffee Legal Minute with our friends Schwartz and Schreiber.
Right. Schwartz and Schreiber is a modern law firm specializing in music, entertainment, technology. I sat down with Alexis Schreiber this week. I asked her about fair use. Let's listen in. Alexis, good to see you. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks for having me back.
Another legal minute with Schwartz and Schreiber. This is super interesting. The major music groups, they've brought this landmark case for responsible AI against Suno and Udio. We've been talking about it a lot. This is in Boston and New York federal courts. Suno responded, and I quote, "Let there be no doubt the outputs here are, as a rule, non-infringing." Could Suno and Udio's use of copyrighted material, owned by the majors, Sony, Universal, Warner Music Groups, could that fall under fair use?
Super interesting, right? Because I feel like when the lawsuit first came out and the complaint, was filed, and after reading it, it was just like, oh, it seems so obvious that there's so many works being, used and trained, and there's just no way that they can get around it, right? So reading the response was very interesting because I feel like with the position that they're taking now is that, yes, they definitely used all these works. They used everything available online and ingested it and used it, but the whole point to it was that, after the mass amount of music was ingested, it was intended for the end user to prompt it in a way that blends and creates a whole new, genre, a new song, a new sound recording. And, I think the RIA has shown through its prompting that isn't foolproof, that prompting isn't foolproof and that there's definitely questionable outputs. So I think that the platforms are saying that this type of prompting violates their terms and conditions. And they're just leaning into the fact that they're a new tech platform and the outputs are depending on their users. But I think it could change the conversation because historically these platforms have been, able to rely on fair use as for being innovators, or I know they gave the example of a plagiarism website, like a website that was, they ingested all these copyrighted works and was trained and kind of asked to determine whether or not they were plagiarized. And that was determined to be fair use. So it's just interesting to kind of see what's going to happen with these.
Yeah, it'll be super interesting. So what happens just if Suno and Udio and others, what if they're found guilty of copyright infringement? What happens then?
That would also be wild. Because copyright is a little bit unique in the sense that in copyright, if a work is timely filed, copyright law allows for statutory damages. And statutory damages are damages that are predetermined if, assuming the work is timely filed, since the actual damages for creative works are very difficult to quantify. So for these, they can range anywhere from $750 to $30,000 per work on a normal basis. But what RIA is alleging in their complaint is that this was a willful infringement. So willful infringement goes all the way up to $150,000 per work if they're determined to be infringed. So it could be astronomical. They don't even have a number because it's just impossible to determine at this point, and it would definitely just be putting these companies completely under.
Well, we'll be watching it closely. Thanks as always for the insights. We really appreciate it. Let's do this again.
Thanks, Jay.
Wow, really interesting. By the way, you can learn more about Schwartz and Schreiber over at, not surprisingly, schwartzandschreiber.com. So before we get into our stories, Jay, I say we thank our sponsors. What do you think?
I think that is the right thing for us to do. So the first one we would like to thank is a special shout out to our friends at Music.ai. Music.ai is a trailblazing AI-powered music and audio platform offering an expansive suite of over 50 stackable AI audio solutions. Want to change the tempo or pitch of your song, adjust instruments or vocals, mute background noise? Music AI makes all of that super easy. Embraced by record labels, agencies, tech firms, and developers, Music.ai is synonymous with audio innovation. With over 45 million users, their tools process over 2 million minutes of audio every single day. They can process yours. Visit Music.ai to get started.
By the way, today's podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Bandzoogle. Built by musicians for musicians, Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform that makes it easy to build a stunning website and online store for your music in minutes. All the features you need are already built in, including dozens of fully customizable templates, tools to sell your music and merch commission-free crowdfunding and fan subscription features, mailing list tools to grow your fan list, integrations with Bandcamp, SoundCloud, YouTube, Bands in Town, and more, so you can easily add content from your other online profiles, and live support from their musician-friendly team 7 days a week. Website plans start at just $8.29 a month, which includes hosting and your own free custom domain name. Our podcast listeners can go over to bandzoogle.com to try it free for 30 days and use the promo code Morning Coffee, that's all one word, to get 15% off the first year of any subscription. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code Morning Coffee.
Yeah, and we also need to thank Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. Edited daily by founder Bruce Houghton with help from Alana Bonilla. Hypebot and sister blog Music Think Tank are published by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town.
Indeed, Bands in Town. Over 80 million live music fans trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It's the #1 artist service platform connecting over 590,000 artists with their super fans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists can access their own dashboard to manage and promote their tour dates across all platforms.
Yes, sir. And a special thank you to Billboard Pro. You want to know what everybody in the music business is talking about this week? Get in the know with Billboard Pro. Billboard is offering Your Morning Coffee readers and listeners a special 50% discount off the price of your subscription. Just click on the link in Your Morning Coffee.
Indeed. Big thanks to our amazing sponsors, Bandzoogle, Music.ai, Hypebot, and Bands in Town. We really couldn't do it without you. And of course, speaking couldn't do it without you, I could not do it without the 33rd hardest working man in show business, Jay Gilbert. He's a music industry consultant. He's the curator of the weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter and a former executive with little startups, Universal Music, Sony Music, and Warner Music Groups.
33rd. I think I was 35th last week. I'm moving up. I get to do this show every single week with my good friend Mike Etchart, longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capital EMI, and Universal Music Group.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. Boy, we certainly appreciate it. Love to have those folks. As we say, we stand on the shoulders of giants.
We sure do.
Yeah. So let us jump into some other stuff here, Jay. This week we're going to explore the world of companies buying up music publishing, masters, name and likeness, etc. In a minute, we're going to break down an amazing article by Ashley Carmen for Bloomberg. But before we do, we're going to hear from Jason Peterson. He's the chairman and CEO of GoDigital Media Group.
Yeah, Jason and I met up at Indie Week in New York recently, and I was super impressed with him. A super smart guy. He's built this great team over at GoDigital and CINQ. That's CINQ. This week, Jason is really going to help us wrap our heads around the current state of some of these IP acquisitions. Let's listen in. Jason, so good to see you. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
There's been a lot of talk about intellectual property lately, sort of a feeding frenzy the last 5 years or so, companies buying up publishing and masters. And it's based in large part to these sunny forecasts and the predictability of streaming. In your opinion, what's sort of the state of the union when it comes to intellectual property acquisition, specifically, in the music publishing and master side?
Great question. So GoDigital, the company I founded and run, is in the business of IP rights management for music, video, and consumer products brands. And to your question, what is the state of IP acquisitions? In short, my opinion is there continues to be a robust market. Music is considered an alternative asset, but it also has characteristics similar to fixed income investments like bonds and annuities. Going back 25 plus years, there was the Bowie bond, if you will. And typically the value of fixed income instruments go down when interest rates go up because of the opportunity cost of capital. So that would lead some people to intuitively believe that the value of music and the transaction volume in the market for music rights might have shrank as interest rates have risen drastically in the last several years. However, with music, while it is truly a 100-year annuity in the streaming era, which is fixed income-like in that sense, all the leading indicators are still extremely positive. For example, there are still 3 billion people without internet globally. And we're seeing incredible rates of high-speed wireless penetration and unlimited data use plans in places like India and Indonesia. We are also seeing high rates of uptake in smartphones worldwide thanks to cheap and readily available Android models. And this has permeated Latin America and now Africa. And fourthly, and probably most importantly, we've seen drastically increasing banking participation rates in emerging markets around the world in the last 5 to 10 years, meaning that people now have a device with data on the network and the ability to pay because they have a bank account. So if you go to Latin America, which is an area where we do a lot of work, and look at banking participation rates 10 years ago, 15 years ago, they were very, very low relative to developed markets like the US and North and Western Europe. And those have come way, way up. Fifth, and probably lastly, as emerging markets become mature markets, we will continue to see price increases in premium music subscriptions over time, because music is still the best value for money among any entertainment medium. And for those 5 reasons, I believe the music market will continue to be robust, independent of what's happening with interest rates. I think these trends differentiate music from fixed income assets because they will cause the market size of people consuming paid and advertising supported music to continue to grow into the foreseeable future. And in our case, we're seeing repertoire that we bought in 2014, 2016, 2017, making more money month over month as it gets older, which is incredibly counterintuitive.
Let's talk a little bit about CINQ music, that's CINQ music. The roles and responsibilities of labels and distributors, they've really evolved and the lines have blurred between the two. Tell us about your approach at CINQ music.
Thanks for asking the question. We're moving into an era, and we've been here for a while, where it's much more artist-centric. There used to be significant barriers to entry for creatives, recording artists or otherwise, to enter the market, and they needed the help of a gatekeeper, typically a label that was typically associated with a distributor. When we had physical product as the dominant consumption medium, you needed large distribution networks, tremendous investment in inventory. Now, as digital and network availability has democratized both the creation and distribution and consumption processes, what we're seeing is that music companies need to be a little bit different type of partner to artists, right? So they need to do the things that the artists and creators can't do. Those are things like providing help where there's complexity, right? Identifying, tracking, and collecting on uses of music around the world at scale is really hard, especially when you're considering both sound recordings and music compositions. And negotiating these deals with all the different platforms is incredibly hard. Providing capital is not a core competency of creators. And when you see the hockey stick, when there's traction, somebody needs to pour more gasoline on the fire. So I think of music companies broadly, labels and distributors now as partners to creators that provide them with value add where it's not the creator's core competency.
Jason, thank you so much for your insights. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to our next conversation.
Thanks, buddy. We'll talk soon.
Wow, really interesting. So let's jump into the story, Jay, from Bloomberg by Ashley Carman. The business of selling out is warping the music industry. The age of streaming has created huge incentives for publishers to exploit music copyrights. From Whitney Houston slot machines to Bing Crosby beer, here's how stars' work and likenesses are being resuscitated.
Where do you find Bing Crosby beer? When Kurt Cobain died in 1994, the ownership of his songs passed to his widow, Courtney Love. No one questioned whether those tracks would have a future. Smells Like Teen Spirit defined a generational sound. But Love later made the decision that altered the course of those records.
That's right. So back in 2006, she sold the rights to those songs to Larry Mestel, a longtime record label executive, for a figure Rolling Stone reported as $50 million. 3 months prior, Mestel had spun up Primary Wave Music Publishing, LLC, a company focused on acquiring and licensing song copyrights. He believed he could establish a bigger business around Cobain's catalog, and he and his team immediately got to work.
Yeah, they placed Nirvana's music in films and TV programs like The Muppets. They licensed Kurt Cobain's writing, to Converse, which printed them on limited edition pair of Chuck Taylor sneakers. I put a photo of that in your morning coffee, by the way. A Cold Case episode used Nirvana lyrics as a key to cracking open an investigation, and so on.
Yeah, so each time Primary Wave pocketed royalties and fees associated with the use of Cobain's work. In the process, the company also helped establish the blueprint for what's become a booming industry in the streaming era, buying up music catalogs and squeezing them for profit.
Right. The pop culture landscape is saturated with the sounds and imagery of hit makers of yesterday, like, hologram residencies from bands like ABBA, which broke up in 1982, flashy biopics with stars like Bob Marley. He died in 1981. And Spotify playlists are loaded with tunes sung by contemporary artists that echo songs you might have heard on vinyl or cassette first.
Well, the music business has long involved the management of song copyrights. In the early 20th century, Congress passed laws that allowed piano rolls, the paper cylinders that fed player pianos to produce songs, to be copied and sold wildly so long as the original composer was paid a licensing fee. These mechanical royalties evolved considerably over the decades as recorded music churned through audio formats, creating a need for music publishers that track the use of songwriters' work and ensure proper payment.
But today, there are bigger incentives than ever for publishers to exploit those copyrights. Thanks to streaming, songs can be monetized many times over rather than simply being a part of a one-time album sale, generating royalties long after their initial glory days. That's why more investors are now looking at music as an asset. The current catalog acquisition boom started during the first few years of the pandemic when low interest rates and inflation pushed investors to seek higher yield assets. That happened to coincide with a number of huge artists entering their golden years, leading to a massive set of deals such as Bob Dylan selling his songwriting catalog to Universal Music Group for more than $200 million in December of 2020.
So buyers now include independent operators such as Primary Wave and Concord Music Group Incorporated, music labels like Universal Music Group and Sony Music Entertainment, and even investment or private equity firms including Harborview Equity and Shamrock Holdings. Most of these investors aim for a return in the high teens, says Brett Ross, who's a senior VP over at Pinnacle Financial Partners.
Even with today's higher interest rates, powerhouse catalog deals keep happening. In April, Pop House Entertainment Group, a company co-founded by ABBA's Bjorn Ulvaeus, acquired Kiss's catalog and likeness for more than $300 million. In February, Sony Music Group, they bought half of Michael Jackson's catalog for an estimated price of more than $1 billion, and that was according to the New York Times. Last December, the Warner Music Group-backed Influence Media acquired Enrique Iglesias' work and likeness for 9 figures.
So once a buyer has snapped up a catalog, it drums up CINQ deals. More in those in a moment. Biopics, branded products, and aggressive social media campaigns to keep the artist relevant long after their death. Here's how Primary Wave and other industry operators are wringing more plays and cash out of the music you've been hearing for years.
Yeah, they call it greasing the wheels. Primary Wave bought a 50% stake in Whitney Houston's estate in 2019 for $7 million, according to a person familiar with the deal who asked not to be, named. At that time, the company was generating $1.5 million a year, says CEO Mestel. 4 years later, it earns almost $8 million every year thanks to quote-unquote marketing, branding, content creation. He says, that's how you create value. You buy stable income streams and add value.
So the company's strategizing starts long before the ink is dry. When talking to artists and their estates about potential sales, Primary Wave devises a timeline for its plans to rejuvenate a catalog and make it relevant for use by brands and marketers. Especially for older legacy artists, the company will create social media accounts to build buzz and conversation around their songs, says Chief Marketing Officer Adam Lowenberg.
Yeah, he said, we know we need to be patient with a lot of these iconic artists who are starting basically from scratch, especially with their digital presence. He went on to say that first phase could take 12, 18, 24 months before said artist gets back to a place where now there's a reason for the brand team to go out and a reason for the artist to cover a song. That's imperative for all of our campaigns.
So when Primary Wave signed a deal with Smokey Robinson back in 2016, the R&B legend didn't maintain any social media accounts. Now Robinson, 84, has more than 270,000 followers on Instagram and over 150,000 on TikTok alone. Talking about getting in sync, licensing songs to advertisers, brands, and film and TV producers is a common next step. These sync deals provides upfront payments to copyright holders anywhere from $50,000 to $1 million for a commercial or $10,000 to $500,000 for a movie, according to Mestel, for the use of a song, as well as royalties whenever the commercial or production airs. Publishers hope consumers who hear the tune will be inspired to go and listen to it on a streaming service, which again translates to more royalties.
Right. It goes on to say that nostalgia can play a huge role in the success of these deals. Streams and radio plays of Take My Breath Away by Berlin, a song featured prominently in the 1986 Tom Cruise hit Top Gun, almost doubled the quarter after the release of Top Gun Maverick in 2022. Streams of Danger Zone by Kenny Loggins, another song from that original film that's also used in the sequel, almost tripled. Primary Wave, which owns the catalog of Thomas Whitlock, the songwriter behind both of those tracks, pocketed royalties from the uptick in those songs.
Josh Gruss, who's co-founder of Round Hill Music, says one of his companies acquired songs in the meantime from the band Space Hog, which is a great bass line in that song, by the way, was used in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. The team saw earnings for that specific catalog increase sixfold from the licensing deal compared to its performance prior to the film's release.
They also talk about the biopic treatment. Musician biopics can be even more lucrative than sync deals. They can create value over the 3 years following the film's release, a 94% catalog streaming uplift. Lucian Grange, from Universal Music Group, said that during a 2022 earnings call in which he explained why the company was participating in biopics such as Amy Winehouse and Bohemian Rhapsody.
So after Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody came out in December of 2022, her catalog saw more than 2.2 billion streams over the course of 2023, an increase of 25% compared to the year prior. In 2018, Primary Wave acquired a stake in the catalog of Bob Marley, who was also the subject of a biopic in February this year. His streams increased 40% from January through June this year compared to the same period last year.
Right, and they moved from biopics to what they call remixed and reworked. When old standards need a revamp, companies with master recording rights often look to have the songs remixed, meaning the original audio recording gets sampled into a new composition. Companies with publishing rights seek to get out interpolations, meaning that the melody or the lyrics are re-recorded without the use of the original track.
So interpolations, which is different than interpolations. Interpolations, once a rarity, can now be heard up and down the radio dial. From 2016 to 2021, the average number of songs on the Billboard year-end Hot 100 chart that had interpolated old tunes had doubled from the previous 5-year period, 2010 to 2015, according to an analysis by music podcast Switched on Pop. Rapper Jack Harlow borrowed the lyrics from Fergie's Glamorous in the background of his 2022 song First Class, while DJ David Guetta and singer Baby Rexha took a melodic cue from Eiffel 65's Blue Dada Da in their 2023 track I'm Good Blue, and I will now take out the marbles out of my mouth.
Total reworkings are also becoming more common. Beyoncé's reinterpretation of Dolly Parton's Jolene on the chart-topping album Cowboy Carter credits Dolly Parton as a songwriter despite lyrical changes that turn the song into a woman's warning to her man's temptress rather than a plea.
Well, many companies, including Primary Wave, own the masters and publishing rights of songs so they can pursue different strategies depending on the music in question. As a result of interpolation or remix, the company can own anywhere from 5% to 100% of a final track and receive royalties whenever it's purchased, streamed, or played on the radio.
Primary Wave worked with Doja Cat on her 2023 song Paint the Town Red, which interpolates Dionne Warwick's Walk On By, written by Burt Bacharach, whose catalog Primary Wave acquired in 2020. The company retained 50% stake in Paint the Town Red. By the fourth quarter of last year, the song had earned Primary Wave more than $1.75 million worldwide. It's since surpassed 3 billion streams. Wow.
Yeah. Well, back in 2019, Primary Wave worked with producer Kygo to remix Whitney Houston's Higher Love, which has gone on to become a streaming and sync hit. It showed up on the latest season of Netflix Love is Blind, continues to play on the radio, and in 2023 averaged 48.5 million streams per quarter.
Sometimes Primary Wave contacts artists and producers to see if certain songs might inspire new iterations. The company occasionally hosts songwriting camps, including a remotely held pandemic-era gathering that yielded a cover of the Cranberries' Dreams, a song in which Primary Wave owns a stake through its acquisition of lead guitarist Noel Hogan's catalog. A singer-songwriter named Griff Clawson covered the song, and this year Primary Wave secured its placement in a commercial for Persil, a laundry detergent.
Right. So sometimes investors will acquire stars' likenesses, which means their names and images can be used for brand campaigns. Starting in November of 2022, Whitney Houston became the face of MAC Cosmetics' line of makeup, featuring an eyeshadow palette and Houston-esque fake lashes. This June, her face, music, and visual clips from her biopic appeared as the theme for a new slot machine over in Las Vegas.
Wow. And by the way, there are photos of all of these things that we're mentioning in this article. You really have to check this thing out. Name and likeness arrangements like these can play an outsized role in catalog deals such as Whitney Houston's. The once-in-a-generation singer didn't write her biggest hits, including How Will I Know, I Want to Dance with Somebody Who Loves Me, meaning that profit off interpolations, remixes, and streams of the original songs, Primary Wave needed to acquire the catalogs of these songs, the writers, Shannon Rubicam and George Merrill, and it pulled this off in 2022, 3 years after the original purchase of its stake in Whitney Houston's work. In the interim between the two deals, Primary Wave focused its efforts on capitalizing Houston's likeness because it had those rights secured.
For likeness deals, Primary Wave can bring anywhere from $50,000 to $2 million, depending on their length and terms. Such arrangements are becoming more popular. Bing Crosby's estate, in which Primary Wave acquired a stake almost 3 years ago, now lends its name to a line of golf apparel from Adidas and Malbon Golf. Last year, the crooner's name and face were printed on a line of beer called the White Christmas Winter Warmer.
Wow. Other companies have been equally innovative with likeness rights, using them to put on avatar shows, like that ABBA thing we were talking about.
Yeah.
That virtual concert residency in London, as well as a similar event, which is forthcoming from the rock band Kiss. In the future, companies could even license artists' voices for AI-generated music, similar to how the estates of Judy Garland and James Dean, they recently licensed their use of their voices to read articles and other documents.
So many catalog acquisitions occur in harmony with the artists and their estates, but the intricacies of specific use cases can sometimes lead to drama. This is the music business, after all. Taylor Swift is probably the highest profile example of a catalog deal gone wrong. After Big Machine Records sold her songs without her explicit permission to Ithaca Holdings, that's a music management company and record label formerly owned by music manager Swift disliked, that's Scooter Braun. She re-recorded her first 6 albums to solidify her ownership of them. As the original writer of her songs, she retained the rights to do this.
Right. Artists can be fiercely protective about how their music and their likeness are used, and they should be, right? After Primary Wave's president, Justin Schukat, met with producer Young Gravy's manager, their teams collaborated to release a 2022 song, Betty, Get Money. The track featured harmonies and lyrics from Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up, a song in which Primary Wave owns a stake through the acquisition of producer and songwriter Peter Waterman's catalog back in 2018.
So Ashley wound up suing Young Gravy and Universal Music Group over allegations that the team conspired to include a deliberate and nearly indistinguishable imitation of Mr. Ashley's voice in the song. The case, which didn't name Primary Wave, was later settled. At the start of this year, the song was earning Primary Wave about $100,000 per quarter, according to a person familiar with the revenue who wasn't authorized to speak about it.
Wow. So with old voices and faces taking up more and more space in the cultural landscape, critics have questioned whether it's becoming harder for new artists to break through on their own or whether they'll have to rely on the songs and sounds of yesterday. In some ways, the business is stuck on repeat. So long as recycling is profitable to investors, music shows no sign of hitting, quote unquote, next. That was just an absolutely amazing piece on all the things, with intellectual property, name and likeness, publishing, masters, all of that. It's a whole new world. That was just an amazing piece.
Well, and as I was reading through it, I was struck by this is, some of these things are what we did when we worked in catalog departments for labels. Mm-hmm. But this is now, but when they have, we used to have to run things by artists. Is it okay to, to do this and or management? And so
or
now
the
when
estates,
you have,
right?
Or the estate, exactly. So that was, and of course it's like what we were doing on steroids. That's probably the best way of saying it.
100%.
Yeah, exactly.
100%.
All right, our next story, Jay, please stop using my song. Can artists force politicians to lay off their music? This is a Billboard article by our friend Steve Knopper. Artists and songwriters can object to presidential campaigns use their music at rallies and on social media, but getting them to comply with takedown requests, that's not always easy.
I always wondered that because you hear that in the news sometimes that this artist is upset that this candidate is using their song and they send them a cease and desist. And I always kind of wondered how that worked. And Steve Knopper put together this really great piece. He starts it off by saying that dozens of top artists and songwriters have objected to Donald Trump's use of their songs in political rallies since he first ran for president in 2015. Among them are the Rolling Stones, Adele, Rihanna, Sinead O'Connor, her estate anyway, and Aerosmith's Steven Tyler.
Right. So Johnny Marr said in January when Trump played the Smiths' Please, Please, Please Let Me Get What I Want at several rallies, consider this shit shut down right now. After Trump used Sam and Dave's Hold On, I'm Coming at a 2022 NRA rally, its co-writer David Porter was even more succinct, tweeting, "Hell to the no."
But artists' record for successful song takedowns has been really spotty. After Tyler's reps sent multiple cease and desist orders objecting to the use of Aerosmith's Dream On, They received the following response from law firm Jones Day, quote, "Without admitting liability and to avoid any future dispute, the Trump campaign will not use your client's music," end quote, the letter read in part. By the way, the Trump campaign didn't respond for interview requests.
So for artists and songwriters, the objection process is simple and the rules straightforward. Performing rights organization BMI and ASCAP require political campaigns to obtain licenses to use songs in their catalogs, which is to say almost any recognizable song. That license gives the campaign the right to use any one of our musical works in our entire catalog whenever or wherever their campaign or function occurs, says a BMI rep. According to the rules from both ASCAP and BMI, a venue's public performance license is not enough to cover a campaign's use of the song. It needs to obtain a separate political license.
See, I didn't know that. That's super interesting. A caveat in the license allows songwriters to object to usage in a political campaign, the BMI rep adds, quote, "When we receive an objection, we will pull a song from the campaign's license," end quote. Does that stop a political campaign from playing the song at a rally? Not necessarily. They don't care as much about artist rights as perhaps you'd want, says Larry Iser, who was an attorney for Jackson Brown, when he sued Republican candidate John McCain for using Running on Empty in a 2008 commercial. By the way, they settled and McCain apologized. It's not just the Trump campaign, Iser said. Most political campaigns aren't keen about just taking the song down.
So what do artists and songwriters typically do in this scenario? Well, for starters, their lawyers send cease and desist letters to the campaign. They also complain to reporters, creating negative media coverage. In 2020, the Rolling Stones threatened the Trump campaign with a lawsuit for playing "You Can't Always Get What You Want" at rallies, while Neil Young sued over the campaign's use of "Devil's Sidewalk" and "Rockin' in the Free World" at events. And this article says, in parentheses, after the 2020 election, Young voluntarily dropped his suit with prejudice, meaning he cannot refile the same claim again. Trump appears to have stopped using the Stones song at his rallies, and the band was never reported to have followed through on its legal threat. Representatives for the Stones did not respond to questions for this article.
So Iser went on to say that while no artist wants to spend money on litigation, if it can be avoided, to be sure, fans understand the artist is not supporting that particular candidate. But do they? The issue gets more complicated when campaigns stream their rallies online via YouTube or another website. In those cases, the song would almost certainly require an additional sync license, plus permission to use a recording and probably a mechanical license too. Quote, "Your ASCAP license does not cover you making a copy and redistributing it over the internet," says Eleanor M. Lackman, a partner and copyright attorney from the Mitchell, Stillberg, and Knupp.
So as for social media sites, which generally have licenses with major labels and publishers for users to broadcast songs in their feeds, a TikTok spokesman said that the company would respond to a rights holder's request for a takedown depending on the type of use and the song's contractual situation. If a licensed rights holder submits a takedown request, it will be subject to review, and if appropriate, we may take action to mute the track. That was a rep for Meta who declined to comment.
Interesting. You know, Trump has been uniquely unfazed by artists' legal threats and criticism, but those conflicts have been coming up for years prior to his first presidential run. In 1988, George H.W. Bush's campaign used Bobby McFerrin's "Don't Worry, Be Happy" as a presidential campaign theme. But McFerrin, a supporter of Bush's opponent, Michael Dukakis, he complained and the campaign eventually stopped using the song. In 2008, Sam Moore, of Sam and Dave, he asked Democratic candidate Barack Obama to stop using "Hold On, I'm Coming" at rallies because he didn't want it to appear that he was endorsing a candidate for president, and Obama's campaign complied. In other words, these types of conflicts are hardly new. Every 4 years, Lackman says, this is a big topic.
Wow. Well, so much more to be aware of as we head to election day in November. But whenever I hear this stuff, I always think about the same thing. It's like, how is this happening? And
I didn't know they needed a political license. That's super interesting. We should have asked our friend Chris Castle.
Yes.
About that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, before we wrap up, there's been a lot of news lately on the DSP platform and alternatives to traditional music distribution. We recently read about an interesting new platform called Helios.
Right. And we asked Helios founder and CEO Ryder Havdale to break it all down for us. And he joined us this week. Here's Ryder. Ryder, thanks so much for joining me today. Good to see you.
Jay, it's a pleasure.
So tell us about Helios and specifically, how is that different from other digital service providers?
Sure. There's a few angles on this. One is we're a hybrid. So it's a mix of full catalog like you would have on Spotify, Tidal, Deezer, Apple Music, and user-generated content. So in the Web 2 world, that would be Bandcamp, SoundCloud, YouTube. In the Web 3 world, that might be Sound XYZ, Zora, etc. The idea, right now we've got Dick Huey he used to be at Spotify doing licensing in the early days. He's helping head of licensing, getting our, all the deals going with distributors. And on the other side of that, in-app, so we're a mobile music streaming platform. So with a side of social on it, but essentially in-app, you can upload albums within a minute. Now, for streaming, everybody's doing this per stream model in the traditional music streaming model. Ours is 100%. 100% of your engagement gets 100% of your subscription gets paid out to whomever you engage with. Likes are worth a little bit, comments a bit more, shares a bit more, and anything over a 30-second listen, way more. So, essentially, if I just listen to one Jay Gilbert track, you're getting $10 that month. If that's all I do is listen to one song, you're getting $10. If on Spotify, that would be you'd get 0.004 cents, and Spotify would take $9.99. So on that side, that's what we're rocking. We're putting in payments in the next 2 weeks, and that'll essentially you'll be able to sell LPs and digital assets right from your phone in-app. Full transparency. We don't data mine, etc. I was basically, I had a couple million streams on Spotify. I was like, did we get paid? Like, there's no transparency. Spotify for artists, you can see where the streams are coming from. But once you start looking under the hood, it's like, this isn't adding up.
Yeah. It almost sounds too good to be true. Where can people get the app? Where can they learn more about you and learn more about Helios?
Yeah, so Helios.party is the site. In a month, it'll be Helios.music as well. But yeah, you just click get the app on the website and or go to the website on your phone, get the app, and we're now on the Apple App Store, Google Play, and we're also the first one we actually launched on was Solana's Saga phone, which is the world's first crypto phone.
Thanks. Appreciate you, Ryder.
As we wrap up the show, we want to thank our sponsors with whom we could not do this. Let's just say we just couldn't do it at all. So that's big thanks to Bandzoogled, Music.ai, Hypebot, and Bands in Town. Big thanks. So on behalf of my good friend Jay Gilbert and myself, Mike Etchart, we say thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week on the Your Morning Coffee Podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.